LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the December 24th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I picked out the weekend's eight best, most newsworthy clips for what should be a really educational, informative, fair use media criticism and political analysis show for you all tonight. The only political comedy source I have for tonight is from the actual weekend news analysis shows. I'll actually have one little political comedy clip I took out of AM Joy yesterday, which includes a clip of Senator Mitch McConnell on Friday. And then I'll have another political comedy clip from CNN State of the Union talking about this comedy thing he does at the end of every show, the State of the Cartoonion. But the premise this week, I'm not going to show the actual cartoon, but I will show the teaser for the cartoon where the premise, I think, actually is some good political comedy. But then I'll have the 6 other clips will come from the big 5 corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News. The big 5 corporate outlets that we call the corporate news here in the United States, and the corporate media. And it's a Christmas or Christmas Eve set of shows, so there weren't a lot of newsmakers. Some of them had no newsmakers, just pundit roundtables, and I normally don't take clips from those. But the big topic is basically the tax win and whether it means that the Republicans are now going to be on a winning streak, a losing streak. How do you sum up 2017 and what's coming up in 2018, and the kind of things you would expect as the politicians leave Washington, D.C., and you can sort of see what's happened and take a break to decide what's going to happen. But the best political comedy clip, I thought, came when Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, was asked at a press conference about Steve Bannon and Steve Bannon's loss in endorsing Roy Moore in Alabama. And he talked about the genius of Roy Moore. First, Mitch McConnell himself made a joke, and then it was on AM Joy where I think Gabriel Sherman, the person who wrote the loudest voice in the room, this book right here about Roger Ailes' rise to power at Fox News, he's on AM Joy yesterday, and his analysis, I think, he's seeing something I can't see. I'll ask you after we watch this 45-second clip if you can see it. We can watch it together here.
Let's talk about his war with Mitch McConnell. Yeah. We've heard him saying you're going to bleed out, brother, and attacking Mitch McConnell, and that sort of absurdity on his radio show. This is Mitch McConnell's response.
Do you blame Steve Bannon for Doug Jones being elected in Alabama?
Well, let me just say this. The political genius on display, throwing away a seat in the reddest state in America, is hard to ignore.
Does Steve Bannon understand that guy has 1,000 times more power than he does?
Mm-hmm. I just want to pause for a second. Just the glee you see in Mitch McConnell's face there at Bannon's defeat in Alabama. I think
So did you watch that clip of Mitch McConnell? Did you actually see glee in his face? There was a little bit of a smile, but do you agree with Gabriel Sherman that there was glee in his face? And I don't know, it is more, of course, it's the famously turtle-like face that Jon Stewart used to do, the Toby the Turtle impression. It's, yup, the political genius on display, throwing away a seat in the reddest state in America. Yup. That's, kind of that, I don't know, is that turtle glee? There was like a little sort of turtle smile there, so you can tell me, do you think Gabe Sherman is right and that Mitch McConnell was actually showing glee there? And so that's the first political comedy clip. That's actually from yesterday, not from one of the usual news analysis shows. The other one is from CNN State of the Cartoonion. Jake Tapper is actually a cartoonist, and so he does this little cartoon thing at the end of almost every show. And I don't normally take clips from it, mostly because it has all this copyrighted music in it most of the time, all sorts of, and sometimes copyrighted movie clips are in there because it tends to have a lot of Hollywood references. This is about, I thought the teaser for the premise of the State of the Union or State of the Cartoonion this week was just enough out there that it was worth using as political comedy to start the show over here.
While President Trump enjoys the holidays at his resort in Florida, kids and adults can enjoy his robotic replica at Disney World's Hall of Presidents. But what if Robot Trump got loose in the park and something went horribly wrong? That's the subject of this week's State of the Cartoonion.
So if you're wondering where the thumbnail came from, it's the premise on CNN State of the Union, State of the Cartoonion this week. What if the robot Trump in the Hall of Presidents at Disney World somehow malfunctioned and got loose? That, well, you can watch the entire CNN State of the Union at a link down in the video description. Also down in the video description, by the way, I forgot to mention, there's a link to my clip list of the 8 clips that I'm using. You can look at my notes, try to figure it out. Those were the 2 political comedy clips. Now I have 6 actual news clips. The first one is the beginning of State of the Union from CNN's Jake Tapper this morning, where he did have one newsmaker on Bernie Sanders, and he started off with his State of the Union taking a break, because now I guess it's Christmas break. But then, like a couple of the news shows, he did talk about the tax bill as a triumph, also the challenges, kind of what I was talking about. This is only a little bit over a minute, but I will discuss it with you after we watch the clip together over here.
I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the State of our Union is taking a well-needed break. President Trump enjoying some downtime as he spends the Christmas holiday at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach, Florida. He's fresh off a big legislative win, finally passing the much-talked-about tax bill. Before leaving town, he took a victory lap.
Thank you, everybody, very much. And these are the people right behind me. They've worked so long, so hard. It's been an amazing experience, I have to tell you. Hasn't been done in 34 years, but actually really hasn't been done because we broke every record. Our last cabinet meeting until...
Of course, when the president gets back to Washington, he'll have a lot to deal with, including the ongoing special counsel investigation on Russia, plus a brewing battle over dreamers, illegal immigrants brought to this country by their parents when they were children. And another potential issue for the president, a soon-to-be sworn-in Democratic Senator Doug Jones of Alabama, who will make another major legislative win for Republicans even more difficult. Joining me now to talk about all of this is Independent Senator.
And the last clip I will have at the end is Senator Bernie Sanders talking about the tax plan that the Republicans passed, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's actually kind of complicated. The pundits were talking about it has this teaser rate so that it's going to have the most benefit for the middle class in the first 5 years, and then those expire. And they're also not as big as the big tax cuts for the rich and for the corporations. And the corporate tax cuts and the estate tax cut, that's permanent. So it's kind of like, but there's still some chance that next year the Republicans will get some credit for it when, starting in February, everyone will see some increase in the amount of money left over in their checks when their taxes go down. It may be, like they said in some of these things, it was like maybe $18 a week for your average person in the middle class. Nothing like what the really rich and the big corporations are going to get, but it could make some people feel more positive about the Trump administration. We'll have to see about that. The best news summary, I thought, was from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. They had in guest host Jonathan Karl, even though apparently his father died this week, something he mentioned at the end of the show. I'm not going to show that clip. That was a very sad Christmas Eve clip, I guess. But I still think Jonathan Karl did a good news summary, both in his live introduction and then the package. It covers a lot of the same ground you saw in the 1-minute clip from CNN State of the Union. This is about 2 minutes and 20 seconds from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos this morning. Jonathan Karl summarizing the week and sort of the context of where we are in the Trump presidency over here.
Merry Christmas. This week, the president's biggest legislative win yet. But behind all the backslapping and self-congratulations, it's still an anxious time for Republicans and the White House. Several year-end polls show the president's approval rating at or near his all-time low, and historically low for a first-year president. This as the political landscape is set to change, with over 24 Republicans already saying they won't seek re-election to Congress next year. But Republicans are holding on to the tax bill as their ticket to success. And at least for this week, they had a lot to celebrate.
A bang of the Speaker's gavel, a stroke of the President's pen. That, a big tax cut, a big political victory.
It's going to be a tremendous thing for the American people. It's going to be fantastic for the economy.
The President says the middle class will benefit most, but the biggest tax breaks go to corporations and the wealthy. And while polls show the vast majority of Americans don't like the plan, Republicans are betting that more jobs and more take-home pay will turn an unpopular bill into a political winner.
If we can't sell this to the American people, we ought to go into another line of work.
Not a single Democrat voted for the Trump tax cuts in either the House or the Senate. They think they've found a defining issue for the 2018 midterm elections.
Don't throw me a crumb and tell me that I'm benefiting when you're robbing the future by increasing the debt, rewarding the rich as you ransack the middle class.
The other big battleground over Obamacare. The president claims he killed it this week by getting rid of the requirement that all Americans buy health insurance or pay a penalty.
I hate to say this, but we essentially repealed Obamacare.
In reality, almost all of Obamacare remains in place. And healthcare.gov enrollment numbers for next year show almost as many signups as last year.
It's always a lot of fun when you win.
All in all, this week was a welcome relief for a White House and a Republican Congress after a year of political infighting. For now, at least, all is forgiven.
And the Powerhouse Roundtable.
And like I said, a lot of pundit panels on the shows this morning. That's why it's going to be kind of a shorter show. I'm almost halfway through, believe it or not. I think, right? Yeah, that was the fourth of my 8 clips, although some of the last 3 clips are a little longer, I think. But before I get to those last 3 clips, which actually have newsmakers in them, that'll be Marc Short, the Legislative Affairs Director from the White House, and then Mike Pence, the Vice President, talking to Margaret Brennan on CBS, and then the final clip is Bernie Sanders talking to Jake Tapper on CNN State of the Union. The last clip I want to show of a news summary, NBC's Meet the Press didn't do a big news summary. They did some really good clip montages, like 9 minutes of Republicans during 2017 talking about various issues, and then like 8 minutes of Democrats. I thought of trying to edit those down a little and show them. Maybe I'll do those in some sort of separate way, but I didn't think they really fit into this abbreviated Christmas Eve show. But on NBC's Meet the Press, I think Chuck Todd did one of the best jobs of explaining how Republicans could spin 2017 to look like they really accomplished some things, at least to their conservative base, although I guess he was actually taking the list that he shows here from Sahil Kapoor from Bloomberg News. And this is about 40 seconds. Chuck Todd explaining what I was kind of talking about before, about how it may be that Republicans can try to stop the Democratic wave we were talking about on the show last week, and claim that they have some accomplishments that at least ring true with their base over in this clip.
I put up something earlier this week. Sahil Kapoor, who's a reporter over at Bloomberg, noted that with the passage of the big tax cut bill, check this out, because it includes the Obamacare individual mandate repeal. So suddenly, the GOP accomplishment list looks pretty hefty, Gene Robinson. You've got the repeal of the mandate, cutting taxes by $1.5 trillion. Oh, oil drilling in Anwar. Remember that one? Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court. But it's not just him. A whole bunch of appellate court judges, maybe the most in a first year of a presidency ever, and a bunch of regulations gone. If you're an activist conservative or a major Republican donor, that's a nice list.
Right, and I actually think.
So what do you think? Is that a big enough, nice enough list for Republicans to stop the Democratic wave that seems to be brewing for 2018? Can they use that list to say that they've actually accomplished things, at least to energize their base, their conservative base, to think that Donald Trump hasn't been a total failure? And it seemed like he might be a total failure legislatively till this tax bill finally passed last week and he got a chance to sign it. But whatever. You can let me know what you think. Before I get to those last 3 news clips that I promised, I do have a bonus Sandy clip. And also, I wanted to recognize a couple of the Super Chat contributions I've gotten during the show here. Here you can see. So thank you, Rationally Meat, for the $10, and especially Ho 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 Sang Mang for the $100 Super Chat contribution. That's awesome. That probably is more than the ad revenue I've made from the last 4 Sunday Clip Roundups. I think they're basically making like $15 a week in ad revenue for these shows, which is definitely helped by my patrons on Patreon as well. Sang Mang, who gave me that $100 Super Chat contribution, is also one of my, is my biggest, longest Super Chat Patreon patron as well. So thank you very much for your long-term and deep support of what I'm trying to do here. I appreciate your appreciation, and it makes it easier to keep going on no matter what YouTube tries to pull on us long-time creators. So thanks for that. And now, also before I get to the last 3 Newsmaker clips for the Sandy fans out there, I do have a bonus Sandy clip. This is about 10 seconds, Sandy getting ready for the show. Last week, you remember, she was in a big hurry to lie down here. It's sort of a slow stretch lying down, it seems. Oh, and also in the background, you'll see my packet of new stickers I will be sending out to my patrons, which I'll talk about a little bit after we watch this 10-second clip of Sandy here. And now Sandy is lying down much more comfortably right over there. She's got her, like, the side of her face down on the floor. But you can also see, like, right above my ear, one of these new stickers. They're actually really nice vinyl stickers. I will be sending those out to anyone who subscribes at the $5 a month level or more starting in 2018. And then I will also have a $10 reward for sending out an ACLU Constitution. Where's my ACLU Constitution? My ACLU Constitution seems... I have like 100 of them right over there, but I don't want to get up and get them. But anyway, those will be the upcoming rewards that I will be putting on my Patreon page. If you want to become a patron on Patreon, there's a link down in the video description for that. But like I said, I want to get to these last 3 clips about the newsmakers. The first one is from Fox News Sunday, where Chris Wallace had on Legislative Affairs Director from the White House, Marc Short. Did not really ask him about the downside of the tax bill. Chris Wallace has been okay about cross-examining Republicans about the downside of the tax bill. That didn't come up this week, which I thought was a kind of a problem. But in this clip, you'll see that he just talks to Marc Short first about basically gives him an introduction about how frenetic the 2017 was in terms of accomplishments, and he asked Marc Short about Democratic gains, and I think the follow-up questions are actually more revealing and better journalism by Chris Wallace, although I'll explain to you why I don't think he does enough of a follow-up on one of them after we watch this 4-minute, 15-second clip together over here.
Fox News in Washington. President Trump is spending the holidays at the winter White House, resting up after a frenetic first year in office and preparing for what promises to be an even tougher 2018. Republicans will return to Washington with just a 51-49 majority in the Senate after that big upset in Alabama. And Democrats are expecting big gains in next year's midterm elections. We begin our look today at what's next with Marc Short, the White House Director of Legislative Affairs. And Marc, welcome back on this Christmas Eve to Fox News Sunday.
Chris, thanks for having me. Merry Christmas.
Before we get to all of that, we've got some breaking news we have to deal with. First of all, President Trump is on a tear this weekend, sending out repeated tweets attacking the deputy director of the FBI. There was one tweet this morning FBI's Andrew McCabe, in addition to his wife getting all of this money from M, Clinton puppet, for those scoring at home, that's Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, who gave campaign contributions to Mrs. McCabe, who was running for office. He, McCabe, was using allegedly his FBI official email account to promote her campaign. You obviously cannot do this. These were the people who were investigating Hillary Clinton. Question. Is that helpful for the president to repeatedly attack top officials of the FBI?
Chris, I think the president believes that the American people have a right to know as to what happened with that investigation. As you mentioned in that tweet, and I think people need to remember this, Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia, is perhaps the Clintons' closest political friend. He gave $700,000 contribution to McCabe's wife when she was running for office, at the same time that they were launching an investigation into Hillary Clinton. The American people have a right to know that. McCabe has announced that he looks to move forward and move on, and we wish him well.
He's talking about retiring when he gets a full pension in March.
Yes, sir. But I think it's also important to segregate that and separate it from the special counsel, because the White House has cooperated in every single way with that investigation. And after millions and millions of dollars, no collusion has been proven. So the president is saying we need to know that our civil servants are doing the honorable thing, and it's important the American people know what happened in that investigation.
I want to be clear, though, because he has attacked in various tweets not just McCabe, but also James Baker, the general counsel of the FBI, Peter Strzok, the lead investigator, Lisa Page. Is he saying that there are some bad apples at the FBI, or is he saying that there's a fundamental structural problem with political bias?
I think he's very pleased to have Chris Wray now running the FBI. He's very pleased with the changes that are taking place. But at the same time, when we put all of our faith and confidence in the Department of Justice and the FBI, knowing that there should be no bias there, he's making the point that we need to make sure there's no bias. And I think there's serious concerns about whether or not there was or was not during the Hillary Clinton.
So is he telling the FBI director, Chris Wray, is his appointee? Is he telling him to clean house there?
I think that he has full confidence in Chris Wray, Chris.
Okay. That's just one breaking news story. There's also a story on today's front page of the New York Times that reports that in an Oval Office meeting last summer about immigrants flooding into the U.S., President Trump said about people from Haiti, quote, they all have AIDS, and immigrants from Nigeria would never, quote, go back to their huts. What's your response to that, and also to a federal judge in Seattle this weekend partially lifting again the president's travel ban?
So a couple different issues there. I was not in that meeting, but the people in the meeting say that those comments never happened. And so I have no belief that that actually transpired. But let's talk about the temporary protective status for a second, because it's an important case. The people here from Haiti are here from an earthquake that happened roughly 10 years ago under temporary protective status. We have tens of thousands of people still in our country from Honduras and from Nicaragua from a hurricane that happened in 1999. Tens of thousands of people under temporary protective status. The president has again and again made the case that on our immigration laws, Congress needs to change these laws as opposed to continual 6-month extensions of people that are here from 10 and 20 years ago, Chris.
All right, let's get to your day job.
So I have to at least give credit to Chris Wallace for bringing up those breaking news questions there that were somewhat confrontational. And, I mean, that second answer there from the Trump administration's legislative affairs director, the White House legislative affairs director, Marc Short, that I think I've heard so many times over the years when I talk about how Republicans are anti-immigrant, that the response I get all the time is, no, we're not anti-immigrant, we're anti-illegal immigrant, that they just don't like the undocumented. It's, they love immigrants, it's just the undocumented or the illegal aliens, as they like to call them, or whatever. Like, I call them undocumented because people aren't illegal, and in fact, as I've talked about in many videos, being in the United States without a visa actually isn't illegal. You can enter illegally, which is a crime, or you can overstay your visa, which is a civil violation, not a crime. But whatever, I don't want to go off on that whole tangent. But you can see from what's going on, what you hear in that New York Times article, assuming you believe it's true, since it has multiple sources verifying that Trump said the thing about Haitians having AIDS and Nigerians not wanting to go back to their huts. And even if you don't believe that, from the answer you heard from Marc Short, it's pretty clear that the Trump administration doesn't like legal immigrants, a lot of them. It's not just illegal aliens or undocumented immigrants. It's legal immigration that they want to cut down on because it's ruining the country, apparently. That is just way too far off what I believe. So I wanted to point that out. And then you heard also, I was going to say that there was some Fox News bias in there. Chris Wallace framed the question about the FBI investigation, you know, the supposed bias in the FBI investigation of the Trump administration's Russia collusion scandal. And he framed it in terms of, you know, is it just a few bad apples or is the whole organization tainted? When the few bad apples thing, I mean, even Peter Strzok, the guy who got reassigned, the worst he seems to have done is like had political opinions that he texted to his girlfriend. Or his mistress, I guess. That makes it a little more salacious. But anyway, I just wanted to point out that Fox News bias there. But the last two clips I have are Vice President Mike Pence trying to spin the accomplishments of the Trump administration and the tax plan positively, and then sort of to refute that, especially on the Republican tax bill that just passed. I have Senator Bernie Sanders at the end. But first, here's Mike Pence, for like I said, talking about the accomplishments of the Trump administration. But then at the end, you'll see, this is Margaret Brennan of CBS News, asks him about Michael Flynn, the General Michael Flynn, the National Security Advisor who has pled guilty to lying to the FBI, and when he knew that he lied to the FBI. And I don't think the follow-up is very good, at least unless there's more than they're showing in the Face the Nation clip that I will watch with you and talk to you about after we watch it together over here.
Portion of an interview Margaret did with Vice President Pence late last week on a surprise trip to Afghanistan. She talked to him about the accomplishments of the first year of the Trump administration and what's ahead for 2018.
This president has rolled back federal red tape in record numbers, unleashed American energy, appointed conservative jurists to our courts, including Justice Neil Gorsuch. But to arrive at the end of the year, and thanks to President Trump's leadership, to see the Congress of the United States come together, pass the largest tax cut in American history, was deeply inspiring.
You see a toehold to get more done.
As much as we've accomplished this year, rebuilding our military, unleashing the full potential of the American economy, and passing the largest tax cut in American history, and other initiatives that this president's advanced, it's clear we're just getting started. And next year, I think you're going to see this administration move on vigorously to an agenda which will include infrastructure and welfare reform. The progress that we've made in the war against ISIS, where we've virtually crushed the ISIS caliphate, taken back the capital of Raqqa, the fight here in Afghanistan, taking the fight directly to the enemy, the investment that we're making in our military, the growth and optimism in the American economy, I think sets the stage for tremendous growth and opportunity in security and prosperity in 2018.
How do you explain to the American people how they should understand what just happened this month with Mike Flynn pleading guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with the Russian ambassador, which the president said he lied not only to you about, but to the FBI, and that's why the president fired him?
We'll let the special counsel and others do their job. We're going to cooperate, but we're going to stay very focused on the job the American people elected us to do.
Can you just clarify how you understand what happened with Mike Flynn, who we'd known had lied to you? Did you know he had lied to the FBI? The president said that's what made him fire him.
I stand by everything I've said with regard to that individual and every other aspect of this. But
when he was fired, did you know he had lied to the FBI?
What I can tell you is I knew that he lied to me. And I know the president made the right decision with regard to him.
All right, Margaret, so the Vice President.
Now, I don't know if there's more follow-up from Margaret Brennan in that Mike Pence interview that they're not showing, but it seems like there should be a follow-up question there because Mike Pence was the head of the transition, and he was copied by, when Sally Yates said that Mike Flynn was subject to blackmail because he wasn't telling the truth about what he said. And even much earlier, he was on email chains where they were talking about what Mike Flynn was going to do. So I think that there is already evidence, that's been reported that refutes some of the things that Mike Pence said there about Mike Flynn, that Margaret Brennan should have used as follow-up. At least that's what I think. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I saw I got like a nice 10-pound contribution from one of my live stream viewers. So this is ending up to be a very nice Christmas Eve broadcast for me in terms of the Super Chat contributions. I appreciate that. I wasn't sure I would even get any viewers at this holiday type broadcast. I'm going to be back next week on New Year's Eve, probably a little bit on the early side, so I can go out to a concert before midnight. But this is the final clip I picked out for you all. I kind of refuted the Russia part of that Mike Pence response better than I think Margaret Brennan, the CBS reporter, did, unless there's more to the interview that they didn't show. But in terms of the Trump administration's accomplishments, and especially the tax bill, I think the best refutation, you can go back and look at what Senator Bernie Sanders said about the tax bill last week in a clip I took. But here he is on CNN's State of the Union talking with Jake Tapper, explaining why this tax bill is a big scam. And you'll see Jake Tapper even asks him about these corporations that are giving bonuses to their workers and saying it's because of the tax bill that passed. And I think Bernie Sanders has a good reputation for that as well. In the last clip for the show tonight over here.
I understand you're not a fan of the tax bill. You don't like the large corporate tax cut, and you're not happy with the tax cuts for the wealthy. But according to the Tax Policy Center, next year, 91% of middle-income Americans will receive a tax cut. Isn't that a good thing?
Yeah, it is a very good thing, and that's why we should have made the tax breaks for the middle class permanent. But what the Republicans did is made the tax breaks for corporations permanent, the tax breaks for the middle class temporary, and according to the Tax Policy Center, that same organization, at the end of 10 years, 83% of the benefits go to the top 1%, 60% of the benefits go to the top 1/10 of 1%. Meanwhile, at the end of 10 years, well over 80 million Americans will be paying more in taxes. 13 million Americans, as a result of this legislation, are going to lose their health insurance. Healthcare premiums are going up. We got a $1.4 trillion deficit as a result of this bill. And Paul Ryan is going around saying, oh, we have to offset that deficit by cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. To answer your questions, should we have focused on the needs of the middle class? We should have. But the bulk of the benefits in this legislation go to large, profitable corporations and to millionaires and billionaires.
Well, let's talk about the corporate tax cut, because in the hours after the bill passed, major corporations such as AT&T and Comcast promised $1,000 bonuses for their workers, while companies like Wells Fargo and Fifth Third Bancorp hike their company-wide minimum wages to $15 an hour. And Republicans say this is evidence that the tax cut is working, not just for corporations, but for their employees.
Well, there are other corporations, by the way, who are involved now in corporate buybacks, where dividends are going to go up for the CEOs of the largest corporations. Nobody denies that we have right now a tax system in which 1 out of 5 major profitable corporations pay 0 in taxes. This legislation makes a bad situation worse, and it drives up the deficit. Many large corporations are going to use their tax breaks to make CEOs wealthier and do very little for workers.
Another provision of this bill that was very interesting had to do...
So I obviously agree with the analysis from Senator Bernie Sanders of the tax bill there. That's the last clip I'm going to show you for the show. You can let me know if you agree with Bernie Sanders yourself. And what I don't know is whether the average voter in 2018, if they're going to be fooled by the scam, the sort of teaser rate that they're getting from this tax bill, where the biggest benefit for the middle class comes at the beginning and then gets phased out. Even what they get at the beginning isn't that great, especially for those of us who live in high state tax states like California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Illinois. There are several others where you lose out. But anyway, whether it's going to be a winner or a loser, I guess we'll find out in 2018. There'll be more of a summary and year-end roundup, I guess, probably on the shows next Sunday. I will be coming back next Sunday and every Sunday for the foreseeable future to give you the best clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows and whatever political comedy I can find for you. And I hope you appreciate the clips I picked out. I appreciate my live viewers, my recorded viewers, those of you who give me the super chat contributions, those of you who support me as patrons on Patreon. I also appreciate if you just give me a thumbs up down there or give me a supportive comment. I may actually be making an edited, produced video this week. I'm very close to coming up with a way. I'm thinking of making a video about Megyn Kelly and the Masterpiece cake shop case in Colorado and how Megyn Kelly covered it a couple weeks ago on her show, and then this last week with the two sides. I might make a video called Megyn Kelly flips on gay marriage, or finally flips on gay marriage, or something like that, based on a video I made a long time ago where Megyn Kelly was not very pro gay marriage in a legal sense anyway. So that might be coming up this week because I have some extra time over the vacation. I don't know, I can't promise that. Like I said, I will also be by either next week or sometime the first week in January, I'll be putting up new reward levels for patrons on Patreon and sending out these stickers you can see here and constitutions to those who qualify. I hope you appreciate what I've been doing. I definitely appreciate you. Sandy appreciates me doing the show every week. She, for some reason, likes to come into the room and lie down and listen to the clips and to my commentary. I hope you enjoy the clips in my commentary, and until I put up an edited, produced video, or until I'm back next week on December 31st, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.